Hi, my name's Steven. I'm Manager of Security Operations for MCNC's Vital Cyber team, and today we're going to be doing an overview of SSL TLS certs. We'll start by bringing order to the mess, and we'll begin with the importance of these certs and why we want them in place. We'll cover the risks of not giving them the care and attention that they need. We'll provide a demo and 3 different ways to check for an SSL cert, and we'll wrap up with some best practices. So, the importance of certs. To begin with, having a good TLS cert there is going to provide greater security. It's going to indicate that you're going to have HTTPS present, and if you don't have a signed cert there, you'll likely be using a self-signed cert, something out of the box. And by having certs, you can provide ownership of your website. So a good cert, you'll have to verify that you are the owner of that domain or that you're that entity. It'll also help prevent copycat websites, because if you've staked your claim onto a domain or something, it's going to be a little bit harder for a bad actor to steal that cert and stand up their own copycat website. Additionally, this makes you aware of what devices you own and their presence on the internet. It's easy to lose track of devices, and the last thing you want is something on your network perimeter with a really old cert. A user could stumble across that and perhaps lose a little bit of confidence in your entity. And, just a brief overview is we do have 3 different types of certs. We have the basic domain cert, which would be good for, just a hobbyist or somebody. Then we have organization certs and extended certs. Those are increasingly difficult to get, domain, organization, and extended, but for most of our clients being well-founded entities, extended cert should be the goal. And again, it's increasingly difficult to get these as we go up, but extended should really be your target, because those will be the hardest for somebody to, get a copy of or, emulate who you are. So the risks. Say we don't care for these certs, or we let them expire, or we just don't even put any out there. Well, we all know that our users tend to be the number one spot where a breach will happen. So if you don't have good certs and you start training your users in bad habits, they'll start to bypass cert warnings, and that's one of the protections we have in the modern browsers to make sure you're going to the site that you want to go to. The next thing is users will lose trust in your website. Anytime Google or any other vendor has a cert lapse, it makes the news. While your cert lapse may not make the news, it would certainly be something you don't want to have to deal with. You don't want an influx of users or clients, customers emailing you asking if something's wrong with the website or if there's been any other issues with their information on your website. And follows up to the next thing. It could indicate a possible compromise of your website. If you have a cert and something happens and that cert's no longer valid, even though it should be, you could have a compromise, or something could have happened there. And from an attacker's perspective, having a expired cert or a weakly signed cert, it's almost a smoke signal to them. If you have a cert that's been expired for a couple of years, likely that device has been orphaned. You don't know about it, you're not tracking it, monitoring it, and it could be a target for attackers to get into your network. Ultimately, not caring for your certs, it's just bad hygiene, and it's almost like you're gambling, except for here it's going to be you against the world. So we'll look at 3 different ways to check certs. Starting off, we'll just go through the simple. So you navigate to a web page, click the lock, investigate the cert. It's a little bit different depending on the browser you're using. For this, I'll be using Chrome. The scalable approach is to install Nmap, and then you can run nmap --script SSL cert, and then the URL you're trying to investigate. You can also target IPs if you don't have the full host names. And most importantly, you can run this as long as you have an IP connection. So this is good for devices that may be internal to your network. You can also script this out, so if you want to maintain your records or check periodically, or if you want to scan your entire network perimeter, you've got ways to do that with Nmap. The alternative would be using a website like shodan.io or Census. One caveat here is that it must be on the open internet for it to be scanned. So Shodan is going to be an internet scanner. It's going to scan. If it can't reach because it's inside your network, obviously it won't populate. And it's also useful, though, because you can look at the history of things, and sometimes it may or may not have history of what certs were there before, in case something changed or you're just curious. So here we'll go and look at the demo of these three. Starting off, we have google.com here. We click on the lock. We can see the connection is secure. Certificate is valid. If we open the certificate, we can see that it expires on August 29th, 2022. We can open up the details, and we can see the not valid before, June 6th, not valid after, August 29th. We can see all of the PKI information. We can see the signature information. We can see that this is a valid cert as to be expected of Google. Now, let's say we wanted to run the nmap. Our command is nmap --script SSL cert google.com. We'll hit enter, and while that's running over there, we'll jump over to Shodan. So I know that I'm querying google.com, and there's going to be multiple IPs it resolves to. Here I'm just going to be targeting the IP of 8.8.8.8, and we get to see for dns.google, we can scroll down to the port 443 section, and again, we get to see the cert, not valid before, June 6th, not valid after, August 29th, subject name, dns.google.com, and we can further scroll down to see more information about the cert as desired. And normally the nmap script for these may or may not take varying amounts of time depending on which resource you're querying. We'll jump back to here in a moment after we go through the best practices. Oh, there we go. That's what I get for doing live demos. So again, port 443, we have our SSL cert, common name, google.com. We see the subject alternate names for other entries that may work. And then we also have our not valid before, June 6th, not valid after, August 29th. So we do have 3 different ways to view our cert information, and we see that it took 52 seconds. Now, let's step back to best practices. So when we're looking at best practices for certs, we want to avoid wildcard certs. There's a link here that'll be in the description of the video below for NSA guidance, and it explains how wildcard certs, they may be convenient because your star.mcnc.org could be one cert for all of your websites. However, it could be dangerous because if a bad actor gets that cert, then they could stand up badsite.mcnc.org, and if they redirect your users to that, there's nothing stopping your users from going to that website and thinking that it's a valid site. You want to keep your cert lifespan as short as possible. About 398 days is now the max. The shorter is the better. So if you look at that Google site, you're looking at about 3 months term there, which of course raises the question of, well, now it's more burdensome to change the certs that frequently. Well, the good news is that Let's Encrypt is a nonprofit composed of different cert authorities, and they have the Acme protocol for dynamically updating these. We'll link to the RFC for that, as well as a guide by DigiCert and Nginx on how to use the Acme protocol and just sort of maintain that automation, because once you set it up, you just monitor it with the tools that we've already showed you, checking on it periodically, but the day-to-day churn of having to update certs across all your websites will be heavily mitigated. The next thing is to ensure strong cryptography. So we're looking at SSL TLS certs as the basis for HTTPS. While you're touching your servers, replacing certs, make sure that you're getting SHA-256 signed certs or equivalent strength. And if you're already on the server, reference our other video on TLS and Cipher suites and make sure you're using those Mozilla best practices of TLS 1.2 or 1.3. And the next thing is, as you're going through all of this, inventory your assets. You may or may not have a CMDB or a list of those assets right now, but it's good just to track those and put a date on your calendar, recurring every month, 3 months, 6 months, whatever works with your unique environment, to go around and just check on those devices, make sure they have all updates. We hate saying it, but if you have another Google Sheets or Excel doc, that can be place to start off with. If you're a member of our Edge vulnerability scanning, then certainly keep an eye out for those reports. We'll spot not only the weak cipher suites, but we'll also spot weak and expired certificates. Of course, you can always run an Nmap looking for port 443 in your environment. There's plenty of documentation on using Nmap to scan entire network ranges. Start scanning for port 443. There's a strong likelihood that something on port 443 in your environment is going to have a cert on it or need a cert. And for some of the clients that are, working with us, we are aware of Rumble. Rumble, again, is a asset scanner that can start to highlight some of those devices. So just make sure you look in your Rumble console for anything that may indicate a web server. So, do hope you enjoyed the quick video just covering SSL TLS certs. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, Stephen Walton, at my email, swalton@mcnc.org. We're always here to help you. Thank you. If you enjoyed the video, please do make sure to share it out with folks in your cohort or anybody you think it could be useful to. We're all in this migration journey together. And always remember, if you have any questions, we're here to help, and you know how to get a hold of us.